we need to talk about avatars. An avatar is a customizable digital body through which a non-digital entity, like a physical person, can be present, interact, and hold space in the digital realm. How did we get here? It begins in 400 B.C.E. with the earliest written instance of the ancient Sanskrit term avatara. Avatara is usually translated into English as descent or incarnation, but more specifically, avatara describes when the essence of a deity manifests on earth in an earthly form. Krishna, for example, is the 8th avatar of the Hindu god Vishnu. The term's ancient verb form, avatarana, carries a second meaning. It describes the act of freeing humans from their suffering at the hands of evil forces. So when we talk about avatars today, the word carries with it two implications. There is a transfer of form to go from one realm to another, and there is a morally motivated act of freeing someone. We now talk about avatars in secular settings because the term was taken on a westward journey of cultural appropriation that began in the 18th century when, as a result of colonialism, scholars in Britain, Germany, and the US began studying the Sanskrit language. From that came the first use of the term avatar in English to describe descents of the deity as preserver by British Orientalist Sir William Jones in 1784. 200 years later, avatars made their digital debut in video games. Let's pause and observe a pattern of religious concepts recoded, secularized and tied to technologies. Why? Religion is the original narrative of higher, infinite and complex power. Technological environments conjure a sense of the other, of higher, infinite and complex power beyond our grasp. So we default to describing technologies using a language we associate with the power, unknowability, and higher dimensions of another elsewhere beyond our grasp, the religious realm. So the term avatar has been secularized and recoded. We humans have put ourselves in the God position, shape-shifting as avatars into the technological realm of our creation. In 1992, Avatars appeared in Snow Crash by Neil Stephenson, which we all know because in it he coined the term Metaverse. But the story is also an early vision of how inequalities might manifest in avatars. The novel's protagonist is a hacker and has access to expensive hardware. His avatar, quote, is a slick custom avatar who's packing a couple of swords, whereas the general population with no access to expensive hardware and to enter the metaverse via public terminals are assigned avatars that are, quote, jerky, grainy, black and white. Socioeconomic realities are hard-coded into avatars. Let's take a lesson in avatar anatomy. What is an avatar made up of? One layer is the technological affordances. Two avatars, identical in visual features, but one rendered 10 years ago and one rendered today will look different. That aesthetic difference is a result of technological advances that allow much higher fidelity textures, definition, and details to be rendered. A second layer is the affordances of the immediate environment, the range of options provided by the creators of the digital space with which a person can customize their avatar. The spectrum of what can be represented in a world is subject to the preferences, reflections, means, and intentions of the people creating the space and the society they are shaped by. The third layer is each one of us. The capacity of expression afforded by our cultural and socioeconomic background, and the motivations, purposes, and desires that each of us brings to a body in a specific digital space. So avatar anatomy is a complex system where everything from the LED matrix that lights up the screen and the political orientation of the software creators to the fantasies of the person behind the screen becomes part of our digital identities. The layered avatar creature is different to a player character like Sonic or Mario. Player characters are our in-game representations. whereas an avatar is a fragment of our identity, an evolving fragment of our identity collage. What does that mean? The fragment of identity evolves according to its lived experiences, whichever world that may be in. How we present ourselves matters. It matters because other people infer or make judgments about us based on how we present ourselves. We know that from living in the world. It matters also because how we present ourselves, what clothing we choose to put on, affects how we ourselves behave, how we carry ourselves. Enclothed cognition describes this phenomenon. The term was introduced by Hajo Adam and Adam Galinsky in a peer-reviewed article in the Journal of Experimental Social Psychology. The same powerful feedback has been observed in virtual worlds. Here it's called the Proteus Paradox. Nick Yee, Jeremy Bailenson, and Nicholas Duchenor showed that how we present ourselves in virtual worlds, so whether our avatars dress for battle or in office wear, the height and build of our avatars will influence how we behave in that virtual world, how we digitally carry ourselves. But the most significant bit of their findings was that the behavior change in a person in the virtual world, brought on by the characteristics of their avatar, continued even after the virtual session ended. After they left their avatar body, the behavior change carried over into the physical realm, into the person's physical body identity. Experience permeates the border between virtual and physical, because experience in both realms is lived and therefore real. Our daily reality in 2023 takes place in an interwoven infrastructure of physical, digital, and hybrid spaces. How do we humans, as physical beings, interact, take part in, inhabit, are present in digital space? How do we hold digital space? We hold space as usernames, user profiles, icons, and avatars. The ability to hold unique space is fundamental to taking part in a society. A unique position means we can be addressed. We can address others in their unique position. We can send and receive. We witness events unfolding from a unique perspective, and we can document these events from our position. Our position, how and where we show up in each digital space, is co-constructed by the affordances of a space and our own motivations. My LinkedIn profile is not the same as my Instagram profile. The framework for expression offered by each platform is different. The motivation and intention with which I curate my identity fragment within each platform is different. In today's internet, there is limited movement, crossing, and overlapping between these identities. There is no real interoperability, no real continuity between the digital identity fragments we've been constructing in lots of places all over the internet for about 2 decades. The only continuous basis that these fragments share is the physical identity of the person that all these accounts or identity fragments are created from. The platform era has encouraged us, socially and algorithmically, to tie our digital selves to our physical selves, to post pictures of our faces, our food, our travels, and our relationships on Instagram, to accurately mirror our education and employment history on LinkedIn. So our digital self is a carefully angled window to our physical self. But now we're shifting into a digital-first era where a virtual self doesn't need to document a physical one. Physicality is not a prerequisite for authenticity on a screen. There is authenticity in virtual expression. People have known this from the start and expressed themselves intuitively in digital spaces, living out alter egos, where usernames are aliases, cultivating close relationships that might never leave the digital realm. Most of us cultivated close relationships online during the pandemic lockdowns. Our online everything reality since then has accelerated the shift towards digital first. The global digital transformation market size is expected to grow by 20.9% each year. So in 2029, the digital first market will be at $6.78 trillion. Something that I first saw a lot of back when the Metaverse was interesting was digital-first fashion and makeup. Things that are all tied up in cultivation of identity. An identity for which a physical body isn't needed. An identity for which the actions of our physical selves don't auto-generate the script. The components are all there to construct, cultivate, and express digital-first identity. The digital world has an infinite quality to it. It's a world in flux. Time spans aren't tied to lifetimes, and the metabolic meter doesn't dictate the rhythm, so identities can shift and change a-rhythmically. There are opportunities here for expanded self-expression. We can escape bodily restrictions and the shame we might be made to experience in our physical bodies. There are opportunities here for living out identities that challenge traditional identity parameters. Opportunities for self-presentation that more closely reflect our multiplicities, that give form to the fluid and fragmented identities that more and more people are already living out. The shift in the nature of identity from the static personal narrative towards multiple selves with contradicting narratives has been recognized for a while. A UK government report from 2013 on the evolution of identities said, "The internet has not produced a new kind of identity. Rather, it has been instrumental in raising awareness that identities are more multiple, culturally contingent, and contextual than had previously been understood." Our fixed identity narrative has been coming unstuck for some time. Our collage of identity fragments has been reflected back at us via our screens for some time too. In 2012, Sherry Turkle said, "Cyberspace takes the fluidity of identity that is called for in everyday life and raises it to a higher power. People come to see themselves as being the sum of their distributed presence on all the windows they open on a screen." Digital-first identities also come with many challenges. Characteristics like race and gender are tied to very specific lived experiences, but flat and smooth in a drop-down menu, gender and race are just visual features. We risk reducing lived identities to trends. Trends you can try on and take off as you please, where the lived experience is trivialized, an identity ripped from its context and styled into aesthetic social currency for anyone to appropriate and profit from. We have to talk about our physical bodies. Physical bodies are not compatible with digital-first identities, but our physical bodies, through whose mirror neurons we empathize with the bodies of others, through whose sensory system we feel ourselves and each other and the world, are not disposable. A body is all we have, a living, breathing, finite reminder of the responsibility we have to ourselves, to our human and non-human others, to our planet. To understand where we are now, let's picture a collage. Identity as a collage that contains all our multiplicities, contradictions, our distributed presences, our account identities, aliases, and alter egos, with our physical self as another ego that we alter between. With each identity fragment, we occupy a unique position from where we perceive and are perceived. Each body, digital or physical, calls forth its own set of experiences, its own way of knowing, shaped by its layers of materiality, culture, and the power structures it's plugged into. The collage contains who we are when we feel the consequence of a body, and also who we are when we're under the illusion that pixel bodies are not part of our matter. Pixel bodies are part of our matter. The pixel body is a fragment of ourselves. We are responsible for this bit of our identity. But at the same time, do we fully govern this bit of our identity? Isn't a pixel always ultimately owned by someone else? Might a software update amputate a part of ourselves? In whose bodies will our future identities unfold?